Well, over the years, I've had a whole bunch of fun making these little bushcraft knives, kind of individually crafted handles out of all kinds of different material. I've made one for my brother and one for Travis and one for Richie. And then I got to thinking, well, our buddy Walker's got a birthday coming up, and he's been on so many fun adventures with us, I think we should make him a birthday knife. So I ordered the knife blank from Mora Knives of Sweden, and then winter came along and everything got delayed. But no problem. Let's get started anyway. So we got some cherry and some curly maple, some oak, and a nice big chunk of black walnut. So what I'm thinking is we'll use this handle for our kind of tentative pattern. Notice hourglass is in a little bit, it has a little bit of a backbone to it. And on the table saw, we'll want to cut off a few pieces that look about yay big. Fashioning this out of maybe blocks that look like that. This is what's keeping me occupied rather than building the knives and leather sheaths and all that other cool stuff. It's it just keeps snowing here. So another day, looks like we're making progress. These are the knife blanks right here. Carbon steel, really nice, excellent sharp edge, but certainly an edge that you can sharpen again in the field, but it holds an edge really well. Good tough stuff. Carbon steel, so if you leave it in wet wood somewhere, it'll rust a little bit, but you just polish that off and start again. I've used several of these. Excellent, excellent knife. So here's our blade right here. Look at that. More knife. Made in Sweden. Carbon. Nice. So next up on the hit parade, I'm going to wrap this blade with tape and make it nice and secure so I can work on it without slicing my thumb off. This is going to get worked into here. So what I want to do first is I kind of want to do a little bit of a reference line on these so that I will know which side is what. This is going to go in there like that. So what we want to do first is we want to make a little up and down drill incision right there. And I'm using this 1/8 inch bit because it's just exactly the right size to slide that in. So it'll fit down over the shoulders of this blade really snugly. So, that's really hard. That's good though. Okay, this is the stuff G-Flex. It's a 2-part epoxy. The nice thing about it is it's got a little bit of working time, so I can kind of take my time and get all that epoxy packed in there really nicely. Got my clamp all ready to go. I'm going to mix it up in this cool little dish here, and we'll see what happens. Oh, okay. Not much to see, but that's him right there. He's all wrapped up in wax paper. Got a little clamp action going here. Don't be horrified when I unwrap him. He's going to look all cattywampus, but there's a lot of material there, and I can just grind that away until I get just the pieces that I want on there, so it'll be okay. Well, here's the latest development. Nice, big, beautiful piece of leather. That's going to be for the sheath, so stay tuned for that. So, as I explained, this big conglomeration of stuff is going to be a handle. And you can kind of see that it needs some adjustment. It's not completely in there parallel to this. In fact, when I lined it up with using my bevel gauge on there to figure out how far out of 90 degrees that is, come to find out it's about 4 degrees. Good. Perfect. There you go, 4 degrees. Well, okay, so this is kind of what we ended up with out of the saw. It looks sort of like that. Still got a lot of cutting to do. I'll use my tenon saw for this guy. I'll try and cut that guy out. Maybe my jigsaw, I don't know. And then after that, it's spoke shave, hand plane a little bit, probably a lot of hook knife, and we'll just get it down to looking something like that. And that's what's happening next. So, kind of the king of the shop, spoke shave. Does a lot of heavy lifting on projects like this. Now this side, a little bit different in that you kind of got to figure out some place to start, and then very gently we're just working through these here. There we go. Wrong way. You always got to kind of figure out which way the grain of your wood is going. And if you try to go against that, you kind of get in a little bit of a bind. This is part of that it takes a knife to make a knife kind of a theory. Okay, so it's kind of coming along. It's going to have a nice fat little bulge here on the inside of the, let's see if I can do this. So the inside of your palm, I'm trying to create a little bit fatter bulge on this right side. So, you know, a right-hander, it'll fill in this little spot inside here. So we'll see how that goes. It's going to be good. I kind of spared you all the tedious sanding stuff there, and I'd like to say I was done, but what I really need to do is just dampen this handle down a little bit, and it'll do a couple things. It'll show me where the scratches and yuckiness is, and also it'll raise the grain in the wood so that it'll kind of make the grain stick out, and then I'll hit it again with that 120 and get it knocked down to smooth again. And then I'll do a 220 version after that. That's our final sanding. That there's what's up next. Stay tuned. I think that is pretty darn nice. Okay, nice beautiful piece of leather. Here's our knife, all pretty much ready to go. I've made a pattern, and this is going to actually sit in here just like this. And it'll be stitched along here. That'll be the welt. It'll be all wet molded. So what has to happen now is we just got to draw this little pattern on here, and cut that baby out. Okay, so that's our little guy. It's going to eventually fit in here like this. And this little flap will go down, be stitched on here. This little D-ring will be on here first to make a little dangler. But the first thing we want to do is we leave this open. This is called cased. So with the leather cased, we want to moisten it just a little bit. And then from there, we'll do a little decoration around the edges. Little leather tooling. This little piece I'm cutting right here is going to be what's called the welt, and it goes in between the two halves of our sheath as kind of a little bit of a buffer, so that if you slide the knife down inside there, it doesn't have any contact with the threads that hold the sheath together. That'll make more sense in a bit. New day. Here's what's happening next. I got the welt cut here, and we're going to use a little contact cement and try and get that guy cemented on there, half of that guy cemented on there. And then we'll do some dye. This is such a mess, but you know, it makes a really good seal after it's cemented and then it's been stitched. Turns out pretty darn good. So while that's tacking up a little bit, I'm going to use my strap cutter here, and I'm going to cut a little strap that's going to essentially be this little belt loop thing like this. It's a dangler that allows that guy to hang down a little bit underneath your pack strap or down below your coat in the wintertime. And it's one of those optional items. You can have it on there or not have it on there. I'm trying 5/8 of an inch. I think that'll make a good strap. So, got our little strap all cut. I beveled the edges just a little bit, and then I moistened these two end folds down. And we're just going to put this in the vise for a little bit and kind of help this do a little molding on this guy. And that'll sort of help it to keep a nice clean bend on both sides. There we go. So I'm going to prep this edge just a little bit. Just going to get some dye on it here in a minute. 5-inch oil dye, oil-based dye. Only way to go. You get the idea. So there's the basic idea. First coat on the front. Put a little bit on the back because when this closes up, then it'll have a little color of dye in there. That could actually go down a little bit further. Being a little bit careful not to put dye on the spots where I'm going to have the cement, because the cement and the dye, they don't really like each other very much. Well, there we go. Looks like my workshop patio is just about free of snow. That'll be nice. I got a lot of projects holding for that. A lot of short little projects today. I got to stitch this, then glue that, let that dry for a while. So taking care of just a few little things at a time here. What we're going to do here is use my pricking iron and drive a few little holes through that and then get that baby stitched. And once that's done, then I can cement the rest of this and put it back together. This is a little leather dressing. It's actually beeswax and olive oil, and it's really helps to get these holes punched through here nice and clean. So now that we have this little triangle pattern on here, we flip that over, and what we want to do next is use our groover here and groove out a little relief there so that when the threads go in, the threads actually sit down below the level of the leather. And then when you're sliding your knife blade in, you never have a chance to snag those little stitches on the back side there. So you can see that all just lays down nice and flat, so there's no chance for that knife sliding in to catch that little guy. And it's alrighty. So that bad boy is just going to sit in there for an hour or so, maybe a little bit more. It's going to be okay. This baby is going to just slide right in there nice, and that'll all be wet molded. I got to do a little bit of work on this edge to try to clean those up. And so I'm kind of thinking maybe my skiving knife a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Make sure this has got a nice beveled edge on it. Next step. Before I apply some more dye to this edge that I've cleaned up here, I'm going to mark these holes with my pricking iron along this little stitching groove right here. And we'll mark those all the way down, And then I'll do the stain, and I'll get some stain in the tops of the holes so that you don't see that white leather, that tan colored leather sifting through there. So for my next trick, time to do a little saddle stitching. And so what we have here is 2 needles on a nice long piece of waxed nylon thread. We're going to take this little beauty and put it in our stitching pony here. I made this little sucker out of a bunch of old cabinet parts, and then what this guy does is sits in here kind of like this. This little red thing is part of a Yakima bicycle rack. There we go. So that just holds that in there. The idea of this saddle stitch, it's been around for years and years, and of course, as you can imagine, it's from saddle makers that came up with it. But basically what you have are 2 needles that go in from opposite sides. So you can see that these threads lay down nice and flat in the stitching groove that I cut there. So once you get these pulled through, you pull them from either side, and you can watch that just go right down deep into the leather. So it protects the stitches from any kind of abrasion from rubbing against something. So this little guy here is going to be the strap dangler. It's going to go like that, and we're going to put a couple of snaps on there. And so to get that layout for that little guy, let's just close him up and make sort of a guesstimation on where you think you want your snaps. We're going to get a little bit of water in here. Notice I got a little drain hole at the bottom, so if debris gets in there, it'll always come out. So I've got this knife all wrapped up in cling film, and we insert this baby in here nice and snugly, get it just where we want, and then you start wet molding this guy right here to fit that exactly. Whoo! Bird, hold out there. All right, new day. There she is. So a few little things to do here. Got to run a strop across the edge and get that polished up one last time. A little more linseed oil on the handle. Going to do some burnishing along this edge, and then it should be done once I get some leather treatment on there. So that's all happening next, so stay tuned. That's the finished product. One of the things I really like about this is the way that grain just passes through those little black walnut pieces. Okay, Walker, happy birthday, pal. I hope you like it. No knife video is complete without a little bit of that. See you later. A little buffing and, what's that called again? I forgot. I'm gonna stomp these holes. I'm gonna put blah, 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 blah.